Hello there, and welcome to a therapist training video. I'm Kent Campbell, here with Berenice Rosillo, and today we're going to be talking to you about the CAMFT Ethics Committee, how the committee works, what purposes it serves, as well as the BBS, the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and how they regulate mental health care providers in the state of California. Welcome to our video, and here's hoping this will be helpful for you. Berenice, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Kent. Yes, so my name is Berenice Rosillo. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am licensed in California as well as Arizona, and I have a private practice, a group practice. I also teach at two different universities, and I'm also a member of the CAMFT Ethics Committee for the current term.
And I'm Kent Campbell, likewise a marriage and family therapist, licensed in California and Washington State. My group practice name is Family Matters Counseling Services. I also teach graduate students, and along with Berenice, volunteering with CAMFT on the Ethics Committee. And we're here to talk today about that committee and the role that it serves for the people and mental health care providers in the state of California. This talk we've organized to think and talk about the way that these two entities help guide the legal and ethical behavior of mental health care providers in the state. And we've broken it up into three pieces. First, thinking about the Ethics Committee, charged with creating the code of ethics for marriage and family therapists and enforcing ethical behavior amongst its members. And then thinking about the BBS, the way that it regulates businesses in the state of California. It's one of many state agencies that does so. And one part that the BBS applies to the state and to mental health care providers is this idea about regulating their behavior and making sure that the way that they're operating their practice fits with the expectations about what we would want from our clinicians and what the public deserves to be well taken care of.
Absolutely.
We're starting with this idea about the Ethics Committee, and it's made of 5 to 7 members, marriage and family therapists who are members of the CAMFT organization who serve a number of 2-year terms. The idea is that this group of experienced clinicians would be able to explain, express, add to, take away from, change the code of ethics that the members of CAMFT choose to abide by, as well as helping to take care of any complaints that arise about the behavior of CAMFT members. And the notion here is that to be a mental health therapist, there are so many parts of the daily work that involve values decisions about what we prioritize, how we present ourselves, and how we take care of our clients. And so this discussion about ethics and behavior is central to the way that clinicians work. The Code of Ethics you can find online at the CAMFT website, which again stands for the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. There are other such groups that are professional organizations for social workers, professional clinical counselors, and school psychologists. Those 4 categories are all regulated by the BBS, but CAMFT is the one that provides the ethical guidelines for our licensure for marriage and family therapists.
For active members, I just wanted to add, Kent.
That's true, which means people who are active members of the organization. The idea is that not every marriage and family therapist chooses to join CAMFT, and some choose not to continue their membership. Berenice and I believe very much in the mission and goals and services that CAMFT provides. For members, we receive free legal guidance, access to a vast array of educational opportunities, and ways to connect with other members. And so to me and to Berenice, it's an organization that serves a really important purpose in the state. I want to say it's something, I forget how many tens of thousands of members are, but it's a majority it's a great number of people in the state.
Yeah, and it's the largest professional association for MFTs in California. And since there are more MFTs in California than in any other state in the country, then it would mean that is the largest professional association for MFTs. So it's truly an honor and a privilege to be a member of CAMFT.
You bet. and to get to represent the organization as a volunteer. This video presents my personal opinions and Berenice's personal opinions. We're not speaking for the organization here, but looking to talk a little bit about it. We'll say that the organization started, actually that'd be the BBS started in the 1960s, and CAMFT followed later at the end of the century, this idea that MFTs wanted to get together to support one another and talk about ways to promote well-being and the business profession.
Absolutely.
The ethical code you can likewise find online at the CAMFT website. The idea is that these 13 different standards describe different categories that MFTs need to pay particular attention to. It's a lot to read and get through, but it's something that's essential when it comes to training the MFTs of tomorrow in graduate schools, that people understand the concepts, ideas, and values that we're looking to communicate as a profession. Thinking about the ethics committee and its code, it is again called to both explain and expand upon the ethics code and regulate these ideas about complaints that there are in any business, as we see from Yelp and otherwise. There are times when consumers are concerned about the quality of care that they're receiving. And so the ethics committee is set up in a way to receive those complaints from the public and try to find the truth and to see if there's a way to grant solace and make amends to the public, to clients, and also to educate the members of the professional organization about what appropriate behavior is. Thus the idea that CAMFT works so hard on educating its members in annual conferences and things like that. But the focus is on teaching us all about new ideas and making sure that everyone's using the best practices.
Right, and just to add to that, Kent, also that these guidelines were created to protect the public, right, and as well as the clinician. So having this guideline, it helps all of us because we mentioned this earlier, that we both come, you and I, from different cultural backgrounds, and we have so many differences as as people, but as clinicians we must abide by the same rules and regulations, and that is something that I think is fundamental in our practice. We need to be able to let the public know that we do have certain ethics and standards that we all follow, and if we are not abiding by those, or we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, that there's committees, and there are associations, and there are boards out there that can help consumers as well as protect the clinicians. It always feels like it's great to have this guideline, this place that we can go to and see, is this okay? Is it not?
And along those lines, that ideas change, right? Not only do laws change, which CAMFT informs its members about what those changes are, but ethics change also over time. So I was licensed in the year 2006, finished grad school in 2003. And one thing that's really changed is what you just talked about, this idea about the importance of the clinician being able to put themselves into the worldview, into the perspective, the cultural world, the identity of the patient, and not looking to impose my ideas about what's right and wrong from my identity, but to really pay attention to where other people are coming from and what makes the most sense to them, both looking at historical issues and current ones. That's something that CAMFT has worked really hard, along with a lot of other parts of our society, to put more attention and focus on, and appropriate that therapists need opportunities for education to get there. And so this is all a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those changes that that we are seeing more, that are actually more current, is telehealth. So before, this is not something that we needed to really look into and be able to practice telehealth in an appropriate, in a legal and an ethical manner. There wasn't, we were trying to do it, but we didn't know really any standards. We were just, the clinician was trying to do their best, and we didn't have them. And today we do. And and I think that's why, again, like these type of standards and guidelines are so fundamental in our practice.
Agreed.
So let's talk a little bit about the process of an ethics complaint. So when I'm working with my students, and they know that I'm a member of the ethics committee for CAMFT, they usually ask, so what is that like? You know, who can make a complaint? Like what does that entail, right? So it's always, I find it fun. It's always fun to be able to share with my students what is the process like, so that they can also psychoeducate their clients and other members of the community that may benefit from filing a complaint for a potential violation. So the way that it works with CAMFT is so someone in the community actually anyone can file a complaint. So it could be a client, a direct client. It could be a family member of that client or anyone that knows that client. It can also be a colleague. And as I have seen in the two terms that I have served in the committee, it can also be a supervisee, you know, filing a complaint against a supervisor that is a member of CAMFT. So an active member is someone that has a membership with CAMFT. And as Kent described earlier, it comes with a lot of perks and benefits. So it's always good to have it. And most of us MFTs in California, licensed and pre-licensed, are members of CAMFT. So the process, just continuing with that. So the staff attorney and the chair of the committee usually get together when a complaint is filed, and they look into the details of it, just to see if that case meets the standards that have been set for cases that we, the committee, can look into. The complainant is sent a letter from CAMFT, and this is done by the staff attorney and the executive assistant with CAMFT, letting them know that we received a complaint and that we are reviewing it. If the complaint is determined by the chair and the staff attorney that it does fall within the scope of what we, the committee, does, a case is opened, and we get to work on that. If it's not, we let the person that filed that complaint, we let them know that it doesn't meet the standards. One of the reasons why a case would not be taken by CAMFT Ethics Committee would be if the person that the complaint is being filed against is not a member of CAMFT. That is the majority of the times when a case would not proceed. And in that case, we let them know that, you know, this a person that they're filing the complaint against is not a member of CAMFT. Therefore, there is not much that we can do. Now, that person can file a complaint with the BBS, the APA, and depending, but the Association of the American Psychological Association. But it is outside of our scope. Let's say that the case is opened, then appropriate documentation is sent to the complainant. Mostly would be letting them know that a case is going to be opened and requesting authorization for release of information. Once we also request any evidence or any other documents that may help the committee reach a decision in looking in if a violation was committed or not. Mm-hmm. Now, all of that documentation must be received within 2 weeks. And the reason for that of the next meeting is because there is a lot of work. You know, as you know, Kent, sometimes we get cases that have, I don't know, 100 pages, 200 pages. We get text messages, you know, printouts of text messages, emails, court cases, all kinds of information that are really helpful for us in the committee. But at the end of the day, it's a lot to read. And we're all professionals. We're all working with clients or teaching or doing all kinds of things within our profession. So we do need time to review and give the proper amount of time to any case that we receive.
And Berenice, 4 times a year, right? Or when the meetings happen?
Yeah, thank you. We do meet quarterly, so we meet 4 times a year. Every meeting, at least since I've been a member of the committee, we always have new cases, which, to be fair, it is unfortunate. We wish that we didn't have any cases and that everyone was practicing in an ethical manner. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, and that's why we're there, right? Yeah. So then after that, so the CAMFT staff attorney and the executive assistant, they gather all the information, all the documentation received, and they upload it to online for us to review it, for all the members of the community to have, of the committee to have a chance to review the documents and be ready for when we meet. So we, during our meetings, we will review all of that information, and the way that we tend to do it is we have lengthy discussions about each case. We try to focus on what are the specific codes that we believe are being violated, if we believe so, and then all of us just again have a discussion about it and decide if any of those codes are being violated, and if they are, then we look into, again, like making note of it, and then we proceed to the next part of the process, which would be our next slide.
Exactly. The thing that struck me is the way that dialogue is so important, that the committee talking through, the way you said, in discussion, right? And that all of us bringing in similar but different perspectives, and about how nuanced cases tend to be, right? I think about I'm thinking about a particular case in mind right now where different points of view from the client and the therapist and me, the observer, lead to different kind of conclusions, right? That it's we do our best to be accurate and find the truth, and to focus on if there is a concern, what's the learning that we can take away from that example, right, Berenice?
Absolutely, and I really like that, Kent, and I think is now is a great time to explain. So this committee, I don't know, hopefully all of them, but diversity is very, very important. And as you can see, when we're meeting, as all of us are different people, we are in different parts of California, different parts of the state. We have different levels of experience. We've been licensed, with different amount of time. So all of it is really important. I think that's absolutely right, because there are things that I don't see in a complaint that I know you do. And it works with like that with all of us members. Interestingly enough, at the end, we always find the same codes that we all feel that are being violated, if any. So the next part of the process, if we do find that there is a violation and we have found the specific codes that are being or have been violated, the staff attorney will draft a letter in the committee. So together we decide and draft a letter that is sent to the member that was found in violation. And that letter would include the copy of the complaint, any relevant documentation, findings of the ethics committee, and again, that specific code sections. So we don't just say like, we think this is not okay, but we say, we know that this is not okay because this part is violating, this action is violating this part of the code. And a request for the member to respond. And I think that's really important because we, at the beginning of the process, we're only going from the information that the complainant is giving us. So we don't know the other side of the story, and we need to, in order for us to make a final decision on the case. So if the ethics committee, so usually the member would respond back to us and let us know, their take on this complaint. And if the ethics committee is satisfied with the member's response, then the ethics committee again would conclude that there's no ethical violation. And if that is the case, then the case is closed and we don't proceed. However, if the ethics committee determines that there has been a violation, even after getting that response, then the staff attorney and we, the committee, would draft another piece of, it's another document that is fundamental to our work. in the committee, which is called a settlement by mutual agreement, SMA. So that settlement by mutual agreement includes what we as a committee believes that this member should do. What is the consequence, or what is the next step for them? Kent you mentioned before that the purpose of our committee is more coming from an educational standpoint as opposed to punitive. So then what do we believe that this member needs to do so that they can go back to practicing in an ethical manner, right?
Exactly. I like that description of the settlement by mutual agreement. That was something that was new to me when I came to the committee, and I like how you explained that it's just what everyone decides they're going to do next.
Right. So once we have that drafted, it is sent to the member. The member can sign it, and then abide by what we mentioned on that settlement by mutual agreement. Usually the staff attorney would be the one that is making sure that this is happening, so monitoring that actions are being taken to abide by the settlement by mutual agreement. And once that happens, then we are notified and the case is closed. Now, sometimes that if that doesn't happen, so if the member does not sign the settlement by mutual agreement, there are like a few things that could happen. So one of them could be a negotiation, which is done with the staff attorney. And that may mean like maybe negotiating the terms that instead of taking 18 CEUs of legal and ethical practices, that they want to potentially do 12. So, just an example of what negotiation would look like. Also, it could happen that the ethics committee could recommend membership to be terminated or suspended. And that, even though it doesn't sound like a big deal, it really is a big deal, because all of us that practice mental health, psychotherapy in California, and I would assume every state, we all get professional liability insurance. And one of the questions when we are filing an application for a professional liability insurance, it would ask if you have ever been terminated from membership in any professional associations or had any cases filed against you. And you are supposed to answer truthfully. And if that is the case, your fees may be higher, or you may not be offered that professional membership for that professional liability insurance. There is the other side of it that my students, this comes actually from previous students that say, well, why don't they just terminate, their membership with CAMFT? They're no longer CAMFT members. So all of this goes away. What we do on our side of it would be that the case would be held in abeyance, meaning like on hold. And if the member ever comes back and tries to join again, then that would be resurrected. If that is not the case, then again, we go back to the professional liability insurance issue. That has not happened in my time since I've been a member of the committee.
So pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. And then, so in closing, I do believe, and I know Kent does as well, that this is important. What we do in the ethics committee, it really matters. It gives me at least a chance to feel that I am part of this organization. I am part of. I have a say and a voice in the way that we practice, and it's just. It feels good to be able to give something back to the profession that has given so much to me. I also think that this is needed because otherwise it would be the wild, wild west, and who is protecting who? So we definitely don't want that. So I think it's important for everyone to understand, and for us as clinicians to be able to psychoeducate our clients if we believe that this is something that they could benefit from, knowing the process of filing a complaint. Also, maybe our students as well. So those newer clinicians that are entering the field.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to explain it. It makes me think about how sometimes it's really validating for a client or a complainant, just to have someone hear their perspective and to be validated that something was uncomfortable. I'm glad that this process, if anything, does just that, right?
Right.
I'm also thinking about the way that the code of ethics changes, and you brought up the way that telehealth is something that our whole world changed with the pandemic, and so the last decade, rules about telehealth have been things that have been added to the ethics code, and that up next for us is sorting through artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, and how that's going to impact our field. And so you and I are working on that aspect as well, right?
Right. So yeah, that takes us to the subcommittees. So being in the ethics committee, we here and there we end up having to develop or create subcommittees to work on new things that are coming in the field, and that we need to work on those. So I've been a member of two recent subcommittees. So one was ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and that was CAMFT asking the ethics committee directly for us to take on that topic, explore it, and look at potential ethical concerns with the use of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and currently the one that Kent and I are part of, as well as subcommittee for artificial intelligence and being used ethically during our practice with our clients.
Mm-hmm. And within the last year, I read in the CAMFT magazine that comes out for all CAMFT members, I read the article where your subcommittee's work, I think it was Mike Griffin was the attorney who wrote the article, as I recall, talking about the ups and downs in legal uncertainties and ways for therapists who want to support patients who want to work with ketamine, how to do that ethically, right? That there are ways that our licensure, the BBS regulates and allows us to do that in ways that's not quite the case.
Right, and I think this one is, so Mike was fundamental in that article, but at the end it was written by another staff attorney, which I think is even better, because then we have like different attorneys at CAMFT looking into it, and just again offering their own clinical and legal expertise in doing this. So I think also it's important to note that CAMFT would ask the ethics committee to review topics that are relevant, and that's done by looking at what other MFTs, when they call CAMFT and they have questions about how to manage this or that, and then based on those questions, we know that there is something needed in the field, and then CAMFT really, I think in a really great way, the board would think about asking the ethics committee to look into that, which is, I think is great. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you and I have talked a bit about this idea about consultation and the notion that a therapist operating in isolation runs the risk of not having much perspective, but if we can broaden it, and if the therapist would pay the fee to have the consultant listen to their cases and the consultant give them feedback, that makes it more likely the therapist is going to make good choices. In a similar or a parallel kind of process, it seems to me we're talking about ways that as a state community, we're deciding together what the standard of care should be. And the standard of care, this notion that the majority of people practicing well would believe that this is the right way to operate, and that what we want to do is make sure that we're, as therapists, we're doing good work that we can justify as being responsible and something that meets the standard of care, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I really like the way you put that, Kent, so that we are responsible for that, right? That as therapists, we have a responsibility, an obligation, to provide the best possible care for our clients. And sometimes there are cases that is just, we're not sure. And when we're not sure if we're doing the right thing, then consultation is best before it comes to the ethics committee as a complaint. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Which brings us to this other entity we're going to talk about today, the Board of Behavioral Sciences, the BBS. The state of California has some 35 different businesses that it regulates, and mental health care is one of them. And the BBS started in the 1960s as a group that was monitoring social workers when that was a new field, and it's morphed over the years. And the I think it was 1997, took on its name the Board of Behavioral Sciences, that regulates marriage and family therapists, licensed professional clinical counselors, social workers, and school psychologists. And this idea that this entity is part of the state that will enforce what the business regulations are, how licenses are given out or not, and what the regulations are, right? As well as making ethical choices. We'll see in a minute. I was surprised to see that the Board of Behavioral Sciences is really indeed a board that is a group of people. You can find their names online and read a little bit about them, usually appointed by the governor, it appears. And what they do is meet, again, something like once a quarter. And as a good state organization, they have agendas online, and there are ways that the public can attend those meetings. And so you can learn more about the BBS if that's something that you're inclined to do. But the idea is, in the same way that barbers, accountants, real estate agents, and all are regulated, that mental health care providers are as well. That has to do with things like advertising rules, what you're allowed to say or not say when you're advertising, how the laws about confidentiality are protected, as well as ethical choices. And this state organization covers all folks who are in those 4 categories in the state of California, whether they're a CAMFT member or not. And the state, with its authority to grant licenses, also retains the right to remove licenses from people they feel are not practicing effectively. They can issue fines, and there's a lot of weight that comes with the kind of decisions that they're going to be making.
Absolutely, and this is where an MFT could lose their license or have their license suspended, and that's why it is important for us to know what the laws and the ethics are, so that we can abide by them at all times.
Exactly. And to earn a license as a marriage and family therapist or a licensed professional clinical counselor, a person has to complete a graduate school program, and then earn some 3,000 hours of supervised practice, and then pass 2 licensing exams. That whole procedure is overseen by the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and they're the ones that clinicians must demonstrate their capacity to earn their license. The BBS also says that folks in this field have to meet a certain minimum number of continuing education units every couple of years. So we're learning about new laws and things like telehealth, but keeping our skills sharpened to have the authority, the permission to serve in this honorable way.
Right, and then just to add to that, the clinical exams. So in order for an MFT to get a license, like 2 state exams have to be passed. And that would be, one of them is actually a law and ethics, and the other one is a clinical knowledge. So that the consumer, so the public, knows that if we are a licensed marriage and family therapist, that we do have the knowledge, the clinical knowledge, and the legal and ethical knowledge to practice safely, to help them in the best possible way.
Exactly. There are a number of different benchmarks to pass a number of gatekeepers, from individual supervisors or graduate programs, and the BBS being the ultimate one to say whether folks meet this criteria. And that's the system set up to give consumers the best chance of receiving good support from the field. If you'd like to read more about the BBS online, on their website, they talk about the kinds of things that they do. And in addition, you can actually find all of the statutes and regulations relating to the practice of, I'm going to say, mental health care, all online for folks to review. And it's daunting to think about knowing all of this material, but it's crucial to be able to do the work that we're interested in doing as MFTs. Just like the CAMFT Ethics Committee has a role of deciding when a clinician may have veered from the standard of care and may have erred in some of their judgments, the BBS does a similar kind of thing, where there are ways to complain. I believe there's a phone number to start with, but you would complete a form like the one used in the CAMFT Ethics Committee. The consumer or client would describe the situation in ways they think that the business regulations or ethical norms have been violated. And the BBS, in a closed session, not open to the public, would hear all of the evidence from the complainant, as Berenice said, most of it in writing, and then the BBS reaches out to the therapist to hear their side of the story. And the committee seeks the truth to figure out what happened and whether there was a breaking of the regulations set forth for the industry, or whether it's something that was not of as great of concern. But the idea is that there's this official forum for the public to be protected from malpractice, from clinicians practicing in an improper manner. And clinicians can have a way of being protected against being accused of malpractice and have a way to defend themselves in that space.
Yeah.
One
Absolutely.
of the reasons.
And that's why I think the process of any ethical complaint or legal complaint is so long. It's lengthy. It takes a long time, and that's something that no one likes. We don't particularly enjoy it, but we do need to be fair to the clinician as well, and give them a chance for them to respond to the complaint. And BBS it does the same as well.
That's right. And finding the truth takes time. One of the reasons mental health care providers maintain professional liability insurance is that the insurance would provide them with an attorney to give them advice if they were in a difficult position before either the ethics committee or the BBS being accused of doing something improper. Do you want to speak about continuing education requirements?
Yeah, of course. So every MFT, we get a license that is good for 2 years. And every 2 years, we must renew it. And usually we have 36 continuing education units that we must complete before the next renewal period. And I think this is fundamental. This it helps us with one of the actually, that is part of the code of ethics for CAMFT, which is that a therapist must stay current. So we need to know what's going on in our field. So if someone got licensed 30 years ago, that doesn't mean that we cannot keep learning. So CEUs is why we do this, and we must complete them. At least in California now is 36 continuing education units that must be done before we're granted a renewal for our license.
Exactly. And I was surprised probably about 10 years ago now to receive a letter in the mail from the BBS when I submitted my application for a license renewal. And they asked me to verify by sending in copies of all the certificates I've earned from completing all those trainings and seminars. I was quite relieved. I had a manila folder with all of those papers in one place, but not surprised to hear online from folks at CAMFT that some 20% of folks have trouble coming up with all that documentation. And I'm saying this as an educational opportunity for those watching this to know that you really need to track that and take that seriously and complete it before the date that you're asked to have that done. And it's a little bit of pressure. I think most therapists are in this field because we enjoy learning about ourselves and our own internal world, as well as learning how to help other people. And so most therapists are oftentimes reading books and going to trainings and things because they think it's interesting and worthwhile and something that they're going to learn about. But there's this pressure and standard about how this is going to work.
Right. And to add to that, Kent, I think because we're talking a lot about ethics and violations and law, it's important to note that the great majority of us, we practice in the best possible way. That there is only a handful of clinicians that are, violating the code of ethics, either for CAMFT or BBS. But that the great majority of us do the best that we can, and we actually do, do it well. And other times, it may be that there is some confusion about the ethics of a situation because every situation is different. And this goes to what you mentioned earlier, Kent, about consultation and why it matters.
Yep. And you and I like how you said that. We're not talking about some of the grave and inappropriate mistakes that some people have made, but we're talking about the process. And I think you're right to emphasize that folks are in this field because they want to help other people and do a good job. That most of us are here because we have the best of intentions, And everyone is allowed to make mistakes clinically, whether you're an architect or a teacher or a computer programmer. Everyone makes mistakes, and we're allowed to do that. But these forums are in place when someone is making a mistake that's really impacting someone because of violating the ethical code that's different. And we're here because what we want to do is to try and teach and share. We believe in the power of therapy. We've seen it work for ourselves and for our clients. And I'm really proud to be part of a profession where this idea about integrity and ethics is so central to understanding how we work.
Absolutely, and that's it goes back to what we were mentioning earlier, that being a part of an organization like CAMFT and under the regulations, of the Board of Behavioral Sciences, the California Board of Behavioral Sciences, that it is a privilege and it is an honor, and all this guidance, that those of us working in private practice may feel sometimes a little bit isolated, that we know that we have the support of these great organizations that are there for us, and also for the consumers, for the clients, that they come to us at, during times that is usually the most difficult, experiences of their lives, and they come to us for help and support. So they should be getting the best care, and that includes care that is done in a very in an ethical and a legal manner.
Yeah, exactly. We thought we might end with some recommendations about best practices for clinicians. Obviously, being familiar with the ethics code and doing your best to follow them would be central to what we've been thinking about. But any other suggestions you'd share at this point?
I do want to encourage other clinicians to join committees. I absolutely, obviously, am biased, and I really like being part of the ethics committee. But any other committees, they're a great opportunity for us to network, to learn from each other, to just continue to feel like we're part of something bigger. So giving back again to the community, giving back to our profession. And this is all done as a volunteer. And I think that the time that I have given to the ethics committee is just so minimum compared to what it has given back to me as a clinician. So, and then getting to know great people like Kent. We would not have met if it wasn't for the ethics committee. So
I appreciate that part as well. For me, the recommendations that I would look to give advice-wise would be to make sure that mental health clinicians do their best to keep really good notes, that you do your best to document your thinking and what's happening in the session. That's going to be, I think, the best way you can provide the best care to the folks you're treating. And it helps one to organize one's own thoughts to go through that process. And then coupled with that is this idea about consultation, that whether it's a regular case that you're sorting through or something particularly tricky, having paid consultants who are there to help you make sense about why you're doing what you're doing, I think is super valuable. I've had experiences where I've been a part of consultation groups where we got to learn from one another, and had times where individual clinicians that I really connected with made a really big difference in the way that I was able to think and appreciate nuances about how to do this work. And going back to that part about really having great intentions and wanting to practice with great integrity and skill, I think that this idea about working with others can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yes. Well said.
Super. Well, here's hoping that you, the viewer, had as much fun as Berenice and I did, but that you're getting something positive out of this explanation about the CAMFT Ethics Committee and the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and how that is something that MFTs need not be afraid of, but can be looking to embrace and understand, and even be a part of if you're wanting to volunteer and give back. I suppose the last thing I'll do is give a plug also for joining your local CAMFT chapter. So as Berenice said, you can join the state organization, but there are a dozen or so local groups around the state that likewise offer opportunities for networking professionally, training, and ways to serve, ways to give back to the community. So here's hoping that folks will take advantage of that, look to keep building community, and here's hoping that we do our best to keep learning on this journey. Thank you for your time and attention, and wish us all the best. Bye for now.